So, turning the natural edged holly bowl. This is going to be part 2, where we finish the bowl off. The bowl is thoroughly dry. It's lost a bit of bark here, but I don't think that'll be too much of a problem. There's a bit on that side as well, and also there's a little check mark in it, little crack, drying crack there. I'm just wondering how deep through that goes. It doesn't show on the inside. It's definitely gone very oval shaped on the tenon, but we'll get it mounted up now. I'm going to be using the long jaws on the Sorby chuck to turn it, and first off we'll mount it with the tenon like so, cut a little collet inside so that we can mount it in reverse and then turn the outside of the bowl. So I'll just get set up for that. One thing you can see when the bowl is in the chuck, there's quite a gap just here, whereas there isn't here and here. This is because the base of the bowl here is rounded like that, so I've just equally spaced that out to make it as square as possible. But as soon as I've cut the inside part for this expanding chuck to go into, then I'll reverse it and square this up properly, and then go back and true the other one up to that, so that I can get a match as close as possible to the inside and outside centres. Good to have the lathe going the right way first. Using a speed of about 1200 revs. It's a little bit too far in. I don't want to go too deep with this, because you can find that if you're not careful, it's easy to run out of depth. By the time you've shaped the bowl, inside and out, it's surprising how much material gets removed, and you can suddenly find there's not enough left to finish the bowl properly, and it's too thin. So you have to be careful how much you take out. I've got this little chisel here that I've made just to make that little dovetail. That should be okay. I'll just check the width, because there is a minimum size for this. I'll keep the little chart here. 55mm. Just about. I'm using an Allen key because the those sprockets have worn a bit. Sorby's very kindly sent me some new ones, but I haven't fitted them yet. Now we'll tidy up the base tenon. Just put my close range glasses on, that's better. Came off there. A little bit of a weakness. At this stage, I like to mark the centre, because later, when it comes to finishing off the base, if you're pulling a tailstock up, it's nice to know exactly where the centre is when it's running true. Now to cut the tenon, I use this little 3-pointer tool, excellent little gadget. I'm not making a square tenon here, although I'm cutting it square at first. So I am actually going to make it slightly dovetailed. Because that's the nature of the jaws. There we are, that looks nice and true. Now we can just, I don't need to reverse it actually, I'll finish off now. Right. I just want to make this a continuous curve into us, and possibly have a small foot remaining, which is why I've left this bit of timber here. So we'll work on getting that outside shape nice first. Bit more speed up to 1500. Just need to make a quick check now of the video that it's properly recording. Tried repositioning the video camera to see if we can get a better angle. I generally look across the top of the piece, because then you can see where you need to remove material in order to even out. As you can see, there's a little piece missing there, so obviously that's still slightly lower than these sections as it spins. And you can see, look at that drying crack down there. That is a bit of a nuisance. But we should have enough material by the time we've removed a bit more. You can see how much whiter that the wood is now that it's dried as well. This is the thing with holly. It takes that funny green colour on when it's wet, but later it just dries out to this pale cream colour. And now we're quite close to what we need on the outside. I won't be able to take much more off to get past that little crack, so that'll just have to be a feature. I still need to take a bit off to get past this little low section, but I'm getting close to the point on the inside now where I'll be running out of timber. Well, we're looking clean there now. I've got a continuous curve, a flowing curve going on. There's no odd changes. There's a little tiny bump there, just very gently. And a little shear cut smooths that off. Got a pleasing shape. I need to decide what I want to do with a foot. I won't be using that gouge. I'm going to walk around the video camera now. The foot should be small and neat, not too big, but not so small that it detracts from the ability of the foot to actually provide support. This little gouge is sharpened along the lines of something similar to Cindy Drozder's style of sharpening. That gives me the outline. I'll just finish that. Curve isn't quite right. That's better. Right, I'm going to sand this now. I won't video the sanding because basically I'll start with a 120 grit, 180, 240, 320 and finally finish with a 400, and that will be the sanding complete now. So we'll come back then when the sanding's done and have a quick look at it sanded, and then we'll reverse it for the inside. I'm part way through the sanding process now. If I just spin the lathe up, I wasn't happy with the curve. You can see now that the curve is more, I don't know, what can you say? It's a nice flowing curve, it's continuous. It went a bit like that and then a sudden change before, and I wasn't happy with that. But now I'm happy with that curve now. That's it feels, when you're running your hand around, it feels fairly continuous. It tends to flatten off a little bit by the foot, but I don't mind that too much. Also, I'm sanding using a little drill with a Velcro pad. These good little Velcro pads, I got these from Richard Findlay, and the Rhino paper that I bought from him as well. This is the 120 grit. I cut these into 50mm squares and they work fine sanding it. So I'll carry on sanding and we'll be back later. It doesn't look much different. The sanding is complete now on the bowl. And I've shaped the foot the way that I want it to be. So now I'll be reversing it and we'll start to turn the inside. It'll be oil finished, so I don't need to do anything else to that now because I'll put the oil on afterward. For the inside turning, I've slid the headstock up to the end of the bed because this allows me a little bit more freedom in the angle of cut on the gouge. And what I'm aiming for is a constant wall thickness. I'm hoping not to have to go a lot thinner than that. I find too thin makes them very lightweight. Get face shield on. underneath from the start with this. With natural edge bowls, this thickness wants to extend to be the same all the way down. It's very easy to lose that, and the only way you can do it is by cutting a little bit at a time, and then once you're happy with that, don't come back to it. Once it's done, leave it alone, and then just work your way in, so as you go deeper into the bowl, so you'll come further down this curve into these areas here. You don't want this to end up thicker, and you certainly don't want it to end up thinner, because it looks totally wrong, and it is so easy to do. So just be careful, patient, a little bit at a time. Cut a bit, check it, cut a bit more, check it. If you get a little ripple or two in there, it's better to take them out later with or as you go, with a little scrape or something, rather than try and put the gouge on it again, unless you're really good at that. And if you're that good at it, you won't be worrying about this particular video anyway. As I say, you can't put it back once you cut it out. So we'll have a look. Fairly good. Just a little bit widening by that small ripple line there. And you can see I've got a couple of little ripple marks here. I'm not going to worry about those. Just take some of that bulk out. Check. Starting to widen there, so we can cut in a little bit more from about here. Check. Fairly close. There's a little fattening just there. You can just see it on there, how that widens up a bit. And on the inside of the bowl there's a little ridge there. Now we've got enough material on here at the moment, we should be able to just take that little bit out to bring it back. Almost there. That feels good. That's a nice constant thickness, and we're reaching the safer zone now. Just feel that. It feels nice. Just the tool rest. Again, I'm feeling for the continuity of curve. It ends in a nice hollow in the bottom with no harsh bumps or anything, and that feels really nice. That's a nice shape, so I'm happy with that. Take the tool rest away. As you can see, there's a few little lines, little ripples in there. And if I tried to take those out with a gouge, this would actually flex. You can see it moving. Look, see, it's thin enough to flex, and you would lose it. It would chatter and cause more marks than you'd ever take out. So you have to know when enough is enough and leave it. And when you've got a nice even thickness showing around the rim like that, you know that you've got it pretty much right. So we'll sand that up now, and then once I've done the sanding, we'll come back and have a look at how we finish it off. I thought it might be best if I did a little bit of the sanding sequence. I've already gone over this now with 80 grit, which has taken out all the little ripples, so I've got a nice smooth surface, and now I'm on the 120, and it's just a case of working my way down through the sanding paper grade. Don't press hard at all, because you just generate friction that way. Just very light pressure and let the paper do the cutting. I try not to have the lathe going too fast either. The speed I've got at the moment, 550. That does two things. It lets the dust, it stops the dust being whirled around by the air so much, which means much more of it goes down through the extractor, and also it helps to prevent the build-up of heat in the process. Yeah, that's looking all right. So now we'll move to a 180 grit. A nice new one on. I'm working at a little bit of a funny angle here just to keep out of the way of the video camera. spend a little bit of time with each grit, giving them a chance to remove any of the deep scratches from the previous grit. And my extractor is a Wright Heath Robinson affair with counterweights and pegs and goodness knows what else to try and position it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's not being particularly cooperative today. It's not cooperating at all. That gives you an idea of the sanding. I'm going to have to stop the camera now because I can't get out of it properly. The bowl is complete now. Where the bark was missing, I've just sanded it in and out a bit to smooth those off a bit rather than take all the bark off. There's a little patch there as well where the bark was missing, and this just sort of gives a nice continuity of curve. The sanding, as you can see, has actually, because I've had to sand in here for the ripples a bit more, has actually bitten into the thickness slightly there, but I don't think it detracts from it too badly because it is quite a thin bowl anyway, and it's a nice finish. It's a nice shape, and I'll oil it now with finishing oil, leave it for a few days, give it another coat, and then buff it up, and then when it's finally buffed, I'll do a little video of the foot being trimmed up, and that will be the completed bowl. Actually, I've decided to do the foot now, so I put this little jam chuck on because it doesn't fit through. What I do is have a little bit of tissue paper like that, and then we'll fit the tailstock. And this is the value now of having your centre mark already placed. It won't be dead true, but it'll be close enough for this. Give it a turn. Turn it all right. Get the tool rest in place. You can see it's slightly off. And you just take this off a little bit at a time. Don't be too aggressive. If you're too aggressive, it will just cause problems. because this will be sanded and finished, I don't worry about it being fractionally off. It certainly won't cause the bowl to wobble. But one thing you do need to make sure with the foot of any object really is that you've actually, that the centre part is hollow with reference to this outer part, so that it goes in like that, and that way the bowl is more stable when it stands on a surface. So just check that with a straight edge. You should have an air gap there. If you haven't, take a little bit more material away. Put a little decorated mark on there if you like, some sort, groove, that'll do. I've got this old hacksaw blade now. I just make a little bit of a cut in. That's it. And while that's still mounted, tool, let's get a bit of sandpaper and give it a nice finish. I'll use a diamond, the diamond point for just to tidy the groove up a bit. That's a bit better. I'm just using 240 grit to finish this, so I don't want to be making too big of scratches in it. I'll go down through the others with a 320. Because it looks nice when you turn a bowl up and find that the foot has got as nice a finish on it as the rest of the bowl. I like it, and I'm pretty sure that people who buy bowls like it too. The 400. And the last little bit, when I cut that off, which I'll do with a chisel, will be trued up with the pad inside in a big chuck like that. I'll mount the chuck in there with the sanding pad in it, and then just hold the bowl up against it. That held nice. Got a little carving gouge here. I'll put that back on there actually. There'll be all sorts of different ways of that people take these off. One thing I do recommend though is whatever you do, you don't push too hard. Have a very sharp tool and just be patient. Just work your way round. And let the blade cut. There we are. I'm not going to fiddle about with it too much because the sandpaper and the disc will sort that out. Nice little natural edged bowl. It's not quite as oval as I planned in the beginning because it changed shape so much and I had to remove a lot of material from the outside, which tended to reduce its length a little bit, but it still looks a nice bowl. Finish that off and oil it. I just with a 240 grit. Keep turning the bowl so that it's so that you keep it even. Now I'll remove the marks. .320. Don't need so long with these because they're just taking out the scratches, and a bit of 400 just to finish it off. Hopefully you can see, I'll move the angle on that. That's a nice finish. There we go, ready for putting the finishing oil on, and I'll just wipe that on. I use a bit of tissue to put it on. I find it as good as anything. And then let it dry, and then when I've finished it and it's buffed up, I'll be using the buffing system, which you can see in another video that I've done. I'll take some pictures of the finished bowl and pop it up on my blog. Let's set this up so I'm talking to you. So I hope you've enjoyed watching that video of finishing the natural edged holly bowl. Later I may put some videos together about colouring, but I need to be a little bit more confident. I'll just show you briefly. This is a bowl that I'm working on at the moment. You can see the interior hasn't been finished, but the exterior has. This is in ash. This was an effect I deliberately aimed for. There's a little bit of feathering down here. I didn't pick it up quite as well perhaps as I would have liked, but nevertheless the overall effect is what I was trying to achieve, and it will look hopefully similar on the inside. I think those two, oh no, there's another one over here. This is another coloured one. I'm hoping that these are showing up on the camera. This one is one where I've tried to make the inside match the outside colours. On the whole it's worked. It does follow it fairly well. Finished with chestnut. Oops. Ooh, that was lucky. Acrylic gloss lacquer, and then buffed it up again. I'll give it a little bit of a polish just to fetch that final gloss up and take off any little dimples. And again, this one will have to be reverse chucked and have the base finished. So more on that at a later stage, using the colours. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.